This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, and Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Learn more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. And by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, one thing that the Apple community talks a lot about, it seems, is the App Store, iOS and Mac, and especially the Mac Store, because, of course, the only way to get on an iOS device is through the iOS Store. But the Mac Store, developers have a lot of options. The Mac App Store offers some benefits, but it also has a few drawbacks. I'm happy to welcome Yaroslav Stepanenko of MacPaw, the product manager for MacPaw, to MacVoices. We're going to talk a little bit about a project they did that I think you'll find interesting. Yaroslav, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, this is great, and this is something that, well, I'll introduce it and then I'll let you run. You all decided to do a survey of Mac developers about the App Store, and some of the results, at least from where I sit, were surprising. Some were not. They were all very interesting. So I'm going to let you introduce it and talk about why you decided to do this.
Yeah, sure. So first up, it's not just about the Mac App Store, right? It's about the Mac developers overall, right? So, and actually there were multiple of reasons we decided to run this survey. I'd say we wanted to make a deep analysis on what's really important for Mac developers nowadays, like what Mac developers do to succeed, what brings more customers and therefore brings more revenue. And also, there is lots of buzz in the community around pros and cons of the Mac App Store and whether developers should distribute their applications via the Mac App Store or outside of it. And we decided kind of to learn more on what's happening in this space. So, like, if you remember, a couple of big developers left Mac App Store recently, and like those decisions definitely deserve attention, kind of deserve to be understood why this is happening. And it's one thing when a developer prefers both channels, like Mac App Store inside of it, but if certain people prefer one to another, that's something that is always interesting. So without having like this data analyzed, would make sense not just for us as Mac developers who use both channels, by the way, but for the whole community. And doing online survey, that seemed to be like the most logical way to get this data. So we invited Mac developers to participate, and almost 679 to be more specific, have taken time to share their experience about that.
So a couple questions just about procedure.
Sure.
And obviously we're not going to call any names here unless you choose
Absolutely,
to.
no.
But was this an anonymous survey?
Yeah, absolutely. This was an anonymous survey, and the data was aggregated just to show the trends and the bigger picture of what the market looks like.
One of the reasons I think you got such a great response is that you are MacPaw. And MacPaw has been one of those developers that has come on in the last few years, several years, I guess, really, with some great products coming out of the Ukraine and some great credibility for those products, because there are a lot of them are security products, maintenance products, things that you really have to feel like you can trust a developer in order to run them on your system and feel comfortable. So I think that's one reason. It's great that this was not a news organization or somebody else, but it was sort of a developer's survey by a developer.
Yeah, that's very well said. And thank you for mentioning MacPaw. Yeah, I think we do have a success track record in the Mac community. So
yeah. I almost, before we get into it, I almost feel an obligation not to defend Apple, but just to remind everyone that Apple sort of in this situation has two faces. They've got the developer face, which is what the survey addresses, but they also have the consumer face, and they've drawn a lot of fire for some of the sandboxing and some of the things that they've done that are consumer oriented, that protect the consumer, maybe to the detriment of the developers, and some would even say to the detriment of the functionality of some of the apps. So keeping in mind that balance, folks, let's start digging into this. So Yaroslav, where do we start here? I'll let you start us through the survey.
Yeah, so I think it makes sense to kind of explain what was analyzed and what the key findings of the survey are. So basically, three questions. We wanted to dive deeper into three main questions, which are, number one was tailored to choosing the marketplace. Like as a Mac developer, you have three options actually. You can go and distribute your applications on the Mac App Store. If this fits your business model, of course, you can go outside the Mac App Store or choosing both. So, and we wanted to understand like what brings more revenue, what brings more customers. And second thing was Mac App Store itself. Like it's full of perks for developers. Like Apple did really good job on supplying with everything they have for the developers. And we wanted to understand if they think it's the 30% rev share is worth it, and what kind of limitations they face while distributing on the Mac App Store. And question number three was, what does the life outside the Mac App Store look like, right? What are the reasons what those reasons are that make developers leaving the Mac App Store, and what it really takes to run the business without Apple's powerful and concentrated user network, because you have to do it like on your own, get the audience, take care of everything. So those three key points was something we wanted to dive deep.
Okay. So what did you find? What were the, I guess, summarize overall what the feeling is about the App Store, the Mac App Store from developers?
Yeah, so if we go one by one, so speaking about the choosing the marketplace, right? That was the first question. So we found out that the vast majority of developers prefer to distribute using both channels. And to me, it was a really, really good sign, because what it tells us is the community is full of, like, there is lots of developers in the community who do explore additional opportunities, who do want to go with both channels. Like, for instance, we've seen developers who build an app, choose one channel that works, and that's it. They don't do an extra step for additional opportunity to deliver the application to a wider audience, right? About a third of the developers prefer distributing outside the Mac App Store. And I would assume this is probably, you've mentioned things like sandboxing, right? I would assume like certain portion of those people do so because their business model just does not correlate with the Mac App Store policies and regulations, right? And the smallest part we have chosen, the smallest part of the audience have chosen Mac App Store as the only distribution channel. So, and you mentioned like what the Mac App Store looks like. We found out a bunch of complaints about the Apple app review process, and the good thing is Apple did resolve the thing. So, like just recently, they did an amazing job improving the speed of the app review. That was like one of the key points to complain, and the clarity of the guidelines. So I don't think we will find that many developers complaining on this thing. But we did observe that Mac developers do not like the one-way communication that is offered by Apple to them, one-way communication with their customers, right? They cannot really reply to customer reviews, right? This is just one-way communication, and developers complained about things like they cannot give a free trial version of their application, or do the pricing upgrades. So, in other words, I would nail it to they wanted a way they interact with the customer to be better, and they want to see a better way to generate more revenue, which is good. But pretty surprising was, and I'm saying surprising in pretty negative connotation now, that no app analytics is not that critical for the developers. In my mind, maybe this is because I'm like from my marketing person, but data is everything, right? Having questions like who your customers are and where your customers come from answered help you be way more efficient with everything else. So data should come first, but this is something that we have seen as is not important for the developers. I hope this is something to be improved. If we launch another survey in a year from now, if we see this indicator improve, that would be huge success for the community, I think.
One thing that you mentioned about revenue, and I'm not a statistician, so I don't know what the plus or minus error thing is on this survey, but the range of sales from outside the Mac App Store versus inside the Mac App Store, the difference was only 4%. The opinions, excuse me, as to where you make the money, and so that says, I think, something very positive about the Mac App Store.
Absolutely.
And I was shocked. I would have thought that would have been a much bigger gap, given what I hear from so many developers.
Oh, well, basically, I think one of the best things that Mac App Store gives developers is a user base, right? So you just go to this marketplace, you distribute your application with the marketplace, and the customers are already there, and that's a huge benefit, because while doing the distribution outside the Mac App Store, like we're doing with Clean My Mac, for example, we have to make sure we deliver the product to the audience. We have to find the traffic. We have to bring the people to the website. We have to make sure that the conversion is happening. So that's kind of what Apple is good at.
Talk a little bit, and folks, I'll have links in the show notes to the survey, so you can go and look at all of these. And obviously, I'll be putting some up on screen. But there was another question that I thought was fascinating, and that is as I think you termed them as detractors, passives, and promoters for the Mac App Store. And for the folks who were in the Mac App Store, I expected a lot more detractors. I really wasn't surprised by the folks who sell outside the Mac App Store. That percentage was very high. But the people that are actually still there, sometimes in talking to developers, I get the feeling like they feel like they're trapped, that they have to be there. And so I would have thought that this would have been a much higher percentage of detractors, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's still what we've seen in the survey, that so the way Net Promoter Score is measured, it starts with minus 100 and goes to 100, right? And you have to make all the way to the positive. And we've seen minuses in all the three groups. So in other words, they all dislike it, but the scale of bad feeling is a little different.
The scale of dislike.
Yeah. Let's put it this way.
Did you find there were any really big surprises other than the ones you may have mentioned already in some of these results?
Well, like I said, some answers were pretty expected. Like, they're not satisfied with the way they are limited in customer communication or the opportunities to generate the revenue. But not taking care of the analytics, I could assume this is not too thought through, right? but I wouldn't expect it to be like that low. So developers, if you're listening to me now, please take care of this thing. This is really, really critical to run the business.
Okay, so let's flip it around. What was the least surprising result? Just the overall lack of love for the App Store?
I thought they take care of. I thought they kind of think of 30% rev share as a key point, right? But it's quite opposite, I think. So.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, and Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Learn more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Text Expander is one of the very first productivity apps that I install on any new Mac, and I think it should be one of yours too. With Text Expander, just typing a few characters, known as snippets in Text Expander speak, can expand out into words, paragraphs, or pages of text, saving you time and effort. That means that you can replace your 25-letter name with 2 or 3 keystrokes, your address with 3 or 4 keystrokes. Phone numbers, email signatures, frequently used phrases, or professional terminology are all fair game for Text Expander. Text Expander doesn't just save you time, though. It ensures the accuracy of your typing, especially on those technical terms specific to your profession. And you get the consistency you need in your professional communication. Professional, that's Text Expander. Text Expander now supports Teams, so that your whole organization, from 2 to 2,000, can share snippets to improve productivity and ensure that your team is achieving that consistency you already enjoy as a Text Expander user. Managing teams is as simple as joining your organization with the company email address. Deploying new snippets is just as easy. Whether you are on a team or you are your own one-person team, Text Expander will help you get more done faster and with improved quality. How often can you say that about anything? Don't take my word for it, though. Visit smilesoftware.com right now to download a free trial and find out what you've been missing. And don't forget that you don't have to leave the Text Expander experience behind when you pick up your iOS device. Smile has you covered with Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Get started today with the Text Expander family and be more productive. All from Smile, the makers of world-class software. Thanks to Smile for being the longest-running sponsor of MacVoices. Another thing that I thought was really interesting, you asked specifically for the indie developers who are outside the Mac App Store as to how many of them have tried being on the Mac App Store. And the percentage was surprisingly high that they haven't even tried. Now, there's some good reasons that some developers wouldn't be on the Mac App Store. For example, there's some utilities that would violate the sandboxing rules completely because they do things that they're just not allowed to do. Doesn't make them bad utilities, by the way, folks. It just means that they do things that in Apple's perfect world are not allowed. And I run probably about a dozen of those. But I was really surprised that there were so many that said, no, we haven't even tried. Was that surprising to you?
Yeah, I'd say this was quite surprising, but you're right that some of them cannot even try it for the reasons mentioned, right? But maybe a developer wants to develop, right? And some of those prefer going this way because this is another opportunity to create something new for them, right? In other words, when you are selling on your own, you have to take care of all the instruments yourself, like the activation and licensing mechanism, the crash reporting, and so on and so forth. And just an assumption that some of them prefer to build their own systems, like we did with DevMate, for instance, right? But we did it for a reason. But if I had a chance to talk to those people, I'd encourage them to use both channels anyways, and no matter how much they like developing stuff. And no matter how much they like or dislike the Mac App Store as a marketplace, like the audience is there, the customers, the potential customers are there. So I'd encourage to go both ways.
The last thing, at least I want to make sure we touch on, and I've got to look because I want to make sure I say it. You asked them, what would you like to see improved in the App Store review process? And I thought this was very interesting. Most of them really just want faster approval, or I guess conversely, rejection. They want a faster decision. Put it that way.
Yeah, that was back then. It was like a huge problem, and like we did experience this when we had to wait for not even days sometimes to understand if it is approved or if it is disapproved. And in case it is disapproved, sometimes there is no clear reason why this happened, and you have to wait for another review process again. But like I said, Apple did a really great job improving this. So we see the negative aspect on the survey results, and we see that Apple is taking care of the stuff.
Now, it probably won't surprise anyone that the second thing that came in was consistency on the application of rules and decisions. And as someone that's on the outside of the developer community, I get a little annoyed at times with the Mac press who jump up and start ringing the bell about one particular thing that seems to be just completely way out of line. Absolutely, some of those things are way out of line, but I have to wonder if I wish more of them would do just a little research and find out just how long or how much discussion with Apple has gone into the decision before they start, saying, "Well, I was thrown out of the App Store because again, talking to some developers, they look at some of the rejections and they say, "Yep, you're right. That rule is there, and I violated it usually because I just missed it. I forgot about it." But once in a while, you'll run into someone who will admit, after hours that they tried to sneak something through and got caught. But for the most part, it's just, oh yeah, there are a lot of rules, and I just missed some.
Yeah. I think this is something that they have to consider as well, definitely.
So from the MacPaw perspective, now stepping back just a second, are these the conclusions of this survey kind of in line with the way you all approach the Mac App Store with the products that you can have in the Mac App Store? Yeah,
definitely, because we have the products that we just have to distribute outside the Mac App Store due to their policies and regulations about sandboxing and stuff like this. We have products like Gemini and Gemini 2, for instance, that are distributed via both channels. And the trends that we've seen in this survey, this is like kind of the pain points that they mention. And the good thing that they talk about, developers talk about in the survey, this is pretty much in alignment with what we feel here.
So given that you have apps in the App Store that are both in and out, but also you have a number of apps that don't qualify for the App Store because of what they do and how they do it, and you are a reputable developer, how do you feel about the contention that Apple is Apple has built the App Store for those people who want to click and buy it and not have to worry about malware or adware or spyware or hacking or any of that, that they want a safe place to go to buy the apps? Unfortunately, that's going to mean that some of your apps aren't there for them. How do you reconcile the two positions? You want to make something useful, but you also want people to feel comfortable and protected. And if they don't know MacPaw, then you're just another company out there.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and definitely the idea behind the easy experience for the user when you just click it and download it, and they are guaranteed there is no malware because Apple team has already reviewed and made sure the application is secure, right? This is a good thing, but there is another side of the medal, which comes back to user experience again, right? Because there is like lots of users who do want to get the trial version first, right? like I never pay for software before I test it. That's the way I follow. And I'm sure like there are millions of users who prefer to download the trial version, to check how it works, to make sure it fits their needs, and resolve the pains and whatever they have to do, right? So we're like, there is no silver bullet to make sure everyone is happy, right? So those are just two different user experiences, I think.
One last thing that you kind of snuck in at the bottom is obviously of interest to you, and that's the use of platforms to develop applications. And it was kind of interesting to see DevMate got more than double the next highest entry. That's got to make you guys feel really good.
Basically, I was really happy to see this, to be honest with you. So yeah, that was a pleasure to see that we are recognized, and developers do use us for reason to distribute their applications. There were some other good names like HockeyUp and Paddle and FastSpring, which is a payment provider partner of ours. So yeah, but speaking about DevMate, I was really excited to see the name there.
And folks, if you aren't familiar with DevMate and you are interested in the development world, we've done shows about DevMate in the past. Again, I'll have them in the show notes just so you can go back and revisit those. But Yaroslav, if you would, go through the MacPaw stable of products right now in and out of the App Store so people are aware of what you do and where they can go to find them.
Yeah, absolutely. So have products for both consumers and developers. So B2C and B2B spaces, if you will. We mentioned DevMate. This is the product that is used by developers to distribute and manage their applications, right? It has some modules for app activation and licensing mechanism, crash reporting, communicating with customers, and all this stuff. Speaking about the consumer side, our top utility is CleanMyMac. We have CleanMyMac 3 now, like the third version of the product, which is like the utility that is used to have more space on your Mac and delete all the unnecessary stuff that you may have. Gemini 2, another product that I personally love. It removes the duplicates, like photo duplicates, for instance. People tend to make hundreds of photos and they're all the same and they're keeping there on their computers. So that's a cool thing. We also have a product called Hider 2, which is used to hide some files on your Mac in case you don't want to anyone to see those. And Encrypto. It's a free product that is used to encrypt the files that you store, that you keep on your computer, or encrypt it before sending to someone else via email. And we also work in iOS space as well. So we have an iOS application, Listen, which is a player. The way it differs from other players, it's kind of gesture friendly. It's perfect for drivers or bikers or people who don't want to kind of make all those touches, but just use the gestures and swipe on the screen and navigate through your music.
So I think somewhere in the middle of our conversation, you mentioned something about another survey next year. Is this going to become an annual thing?
Basically, I think that definitely yes, because we did receive a lot of responses, and the feedback is really, really valuable, and we've heard lots of positive feedback, both from the Mac community and the press who published it on the web already. So I think it would make a lot of sense to do it once again and to see what has changed, what has been improved, and where the market goes. Because there are some hot topics happening now, which were not included in this survey, but I think in a year from now we'll be talking about them, like subscription model, for example. Like the whole, I think like the whole world is moving into the subscription space. Not just in the Mac space, right? Users do not pay for music. They use Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, right? They don't pay for full price for the movies. They just subscribe to Netflix, and for a certain small monthly fee, they like get the huge value and get the access to everything that you may want, right? So I think this is something that should be happening within the Mac space. It's not like the Mac App Store is not quite there yet, even though they announced the subscription for Mac applications at WWDC in June, right? But this is not something that really fits everyone, that fits all the developers, because like there are certain limitations. It just works as in-app purchases, and not all the apps are allowed to go for it. So this is something that I'd love to be talking about in a year from now.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the general population don't really appreciate that there are various issues that come up with developers. The Mac App Store obviously is one. Subscriptions obviously is a hot topic, I think, for everyone, because it hits the consumer and the developer side. There's a lot that goes on the developer side alone, though, that I think doesn't get enough attention. And surveys like this are definitely a good thing, because it helps bring it all into the mainstream, gives the rest of us a look at what developers are thinking and how it may affect us down the road. So.
Yeah.
Yaroslav, thank you so much for sharing this. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk about it, and I hope to have you or some of the team from MacPaw back on the next time that you bring out another great product or great next version of your product, because it seems like that happens a lot.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Again, check out the link. Go and take a look at this. Jump into the shoes of the developers and see what you think about some of these issues and how they're going to affect you as a consumer going forward. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard, that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.